What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers, and break down what's going on with the overall market, especially going into tomorrow, as we have some data coming out and some important earnings, especially for the remainder of the week as well. But before I begin things up, all this information, before I talk about what's going on with all these different charts, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. This offer ends in just 9 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the market. So, looking at the market, we saw a very, very significant downtrend over the last couple of days that led to an aggressive sell-off. But the question is, will the market try to bounce here as we're approaching some critical support, or are we going to see even more downside? So I'm going to be breaking down some very, very important levels around these areas and talk about what's very probable to happen, looking at some historical data and also looking at what's happening for the week. So, as a reminder, when it comes to earnings, we just have a couple of them coming out for tomorrow. We have a couple of banks, such as the Bank of Hawaii and the Bank of Hope, which is pretty funny, coming out in the morning. And then that's pretty much it for Monday. There's nothing too big for Monday. But then from Tuesday through Thursday, we have some huge earnings coming out. On Tuesday, we have Coca Cola, Microsoft, Alphabet, Snap, and just a couple of others. For Wednesday, we have Meta and IBM after the market closes. And then for Thursday, we have Intel and Amazon. And Amazon is going to be one of the biggest ones for the week. This is going to be very important for the market. We'll be watching to see how the market looks at these. And then, as a reminder, we don't really have too much data for tomorrow. We just have the Chicago Fed National Activity Index, which is going to be coming out an hour before the market opens. And that's pretty much it. There's nothing else that's too big. I think the Fed has a board meeting, but that's not going to affect the market as much. For Monday, on Tuesday, we have more data coming out, the PMI releases, which could cause more volatility. But for tomorrow specifically, there's not really a whole lot going on. Now, when it comes to the market, futures are starting to edge a little bit higher today as we're starting to see some excitement, some buyers stepping in right before the big tech earnings. And this makes me think that the market may bounce very soon, at least just temporarily, just as we approach these big earnings. And it is very possible for that to happen, but we have to be watching these levels I'm going to talk about over the next couple of minutes. Now, on top of this, the expectations are not the strongest for these earnings. So this gives the earnings a better shot at being quite decent. Most earnings so far have been quite decent and, pretty good, I would say. A couple of them have been a little bit weaker than expected, and Tesla was one of those few that ended up missing. So, like I said before, as long as these earnings are decent, the market could still have a decent chance. And I think it's going to be very mixed and kind of decent as well. So now let's break down some levels. What is the market likely going to be doing? Looking at SPY, I'm going to start off using trading, Webull, not TradingView. I want to start off with this just to show you guys some divergences before I break down more specific technicals. So for now, there's a bullish divergence developing on the SPY chart on the 30 minutes time frame. This tends to signal a reversal that could be coming. However, there's no confirmation of us bouncing just yet because we ended up selling off at the very end of Friday. So there's no sign of us truly bouncing yet on the chart. The market structure has been bearish, but there's a signal suggesting that there could be a reversal very, very soon. And the same thing is going on for like Tesla, the QQQ, Nvda, and a couple of other tickers. So on SPY specifically, I just want to call this out. We basically touched 420 during the after hours, and I think that the downside is going to be kind of limited. I think the market is due for a bounce thanks to the bullish divergence, but just for confirmation, watch 420. Let's see if SPY kind of like bounces off this 420 support as we have some critical support right there. And the last time we hit this 420 area, we kind of like started to ping pong off of it. So there's a good chance we're going to see this thing try to bounce. Now, if we lose 420, we could drop a little bit more towards like 418 and then bounce, but it's got to be one of those two most likely. So either we bounce off 420 is what I'm predicting, or we come all the way down to 418 and then we get the bounce based off previous technicals and previous levels. My guts tells me we're going to likely see a bounce very, very soon. So watch this 420 support. If we break above this and end up bouncing, watch 422 for some resistance. Then watch these imbalances such as the 423.5 area. If we get above that, I could see 425 on SPY for a very small bounce. But watch this test at 420 first. Do we break a little bit below this and then bounce, or do we end up bouncing straight off 420? The odds favor us bouncing off 420, so watch that very carefully for tomorrow. Now for the QQQ, it's the same thing that's going on. There's a bullish divergence developing on the chart. Let me just show you that real quick. Right about here on the QQQ, basically, we have this hourly bullish divergence developing, which suggests that a bounce should be coming. But just to be safe, we're going to be watching to see if this bounce happens immediately or not. So I'm just going to delete these lines. I had these drawn up from yesterday's video for reference, but don't worry about those. So this suggests that we have this trend line right here, this white trend line acting as key support. So we could see this thing drop a little bit more towards 352.5 and then try to bounce, or it could hold 354 around that area and then bounce from here. So I'm seeing a bounce coming very likely towards these imbalances. And I think it's going to be approaching the 50 EMA all over again on the 30 minutes time frame, which happens to be around this 357.8 area. So I'm going to be looking for a bounce on the QQQ. Either it holds this 354 area and bounces towards 357.86, or it drops a little bit more, just a tiny bit more, and then it ends up bouncing, right? But I believe the odds favor a bounce very soon, and that's what I'm seeing for the QQQ. Now, what about for Tesla? How is Tesla looking? Well, I'm going to look at something very interesting on Tesla. Tesla has made an attempt to bounce, at least for like the super short term going into for Friday's close. And I think it's going to make an attempt to bounce just temporarily because it's very, very oversold. So why am I saying that? There are many reasons. One of them is the fact that Tesla is very oversold. It's been dropping very hard over the last couple of days. And we have a double bullish divergence developing on the chart at this 210 area. There's a bullish divergence on the 30 minutes time frame. And please remember that Tesla hit 210 in the morning on Friday. Then it bounced a little bit, came right back down, but it managed to hold above 212, which is a good sign. This tells me that buyers are starting to step in and they're trying to defend their positions on Tesla. So I believe, okay, it depends on if Tesla could hold this support or not. I think we're going to be bouncing off between 210 and 212. And I think the odds favor Tesla trying to come back to about 218. For not like a massive bounce, guys, I'm not calling this as a huge bounce, just a very small technical bounce, which Tesla is due for. And I think that's going to be happening for tomorrow. All right. So where do I think Tesla could go to if we do drop more? Watch this 210 to 212 support. If we lose 210, I mean, it is possible for us to come down to 208, but I'm not really counting on much more downside. I believe very close to these levels, we're going to see some buyers stepping in to defend, and they may be pushing Tesla all the way up towards 218 plus, towards this imbalance. And if we break this, 220 is going to be on the table. Once again, I'm not saying it's going to be a massive, massive bounce. Just a very small technical bounce is what I'm anticipating for Tesla, and it could be happening as soon as tomorrow. Now, for Nvidia stock, we're seeing something very similar developing as that of Tesla, because looking at Nvidia, we have this potential divergence that's also being established right here. So sorry, I have Nvidia right here on the 30 minutes time frame. We have a nice bullish divergence on the 30 minutes time frame. We saw Nvidia attempts to rebound, and also Nvidia touched this 410 support before trying to bounce a little bit, but it ended up coming back down to 412. Now, I just want to call out 409 on Nvidia's, where we have some very key support. Because the last time we hit that 409 to 407 area, we saw a very, very nice bounce, and it came all the way up to 476. So could Nvidia drop a little bit more? It could drop a tiny bit more towards 407 to 409 and then bounce, or it could just bounce from here since we have a bullish divergence. It's got to be one of those two. So look for a bounce on Nvidia. So once again, it might rebound towards this. It may get very close to 420 at the very least. I can see this imbalance right here. So it's either going to bounce from where we are right now towards 420, or it drops a tiny bit more towards this 407 to 409 area, just a little bit more of a drop. Then it bounces nicely back up to 420. It's got to be one of those two. My guts tells me that it's going to try to bounce as soon as Monday. So watch for the bounce. That's what's going to likely happen for tomorrow. Same thing on Aapl. Now, don't forget, Aapl has earnings coming out over the next couple of weeks, but for now, Aapl has been selling off quite aggressively, and we managed to hit this key support at 172.6. This is where we saw some wicks. Excuse me. This is where we saw some wicks touching in the past before this thing tried to bounce. So there's a chance that Aapl could hold this support and try to bounce from here. However, we want to be watching some key supports first. If we look at Aapl on the 30 minutes time frame, you will see that this thing has a bullish divergence that's been developing, and there's a good chance it may try to hold this as a bottom. In fact, with this double bullish divergence, this could be Aapl trying to set up for a small bounce all the way back up to 174. So we're going to be watching that very carefully. Now, if Aapl drops a little bit more, if we lose this 172.6 support, I could see it get very close towards 170. It's going to get very close to that before bouncing, or it just bounces off 172.6. It's got to be one of those two. Either way, I see a bounce coming. So it could drop a $1 to $2 more, a 1 to 2 point drop before this thing ends up bouncing. Excuse me, guys. It drops a little bit more than bounces. or it tries to bounce from like right here. My gut tells me it's going to try to bounce very soon. So look for a bounce on Apple, and it's going to try to make its way up to about 174. And then if it breaks down, watch 175, 175.5, and 176. So watch for either a little bit more dropping before it bounces or a bounce from right here. And that's going to be very good for Apple. Now, anyways, that's pretty much it for the main five I tend to talk about. Another thing that's quite good for the market, at least for the bulls, would be the fact that on the VIX, we have a bearish divergence that's developing on the 30 minutes time frame, which suggests that maybe the VIX goes a little higher, maybe the market's going to drop a tiny bit more, and then this thing ends up sinking back down and starts projecting, and the VIX makes its way back down below 20. There's a good chance of that happening since the VIX is developing this bearish signal. On the 4 hour time frame, I'm seeing the same thing. There's a very bearish looking divergence on the 4 hour, which tells me the VIX is going to get dragged down soon. We also have this gap down here on the 4 hour down to about 17.8, which says the market may make an attempt to bounce very, very soon, maybe as soon as tomorrow. The dollar index on the 4 hour, it's been actually trading kind of sideways, not really doing a whole lot. Been downtrending a bit. I'm not really seeing anything too crazy on it. It's just barely holding 106. So if we lose 106, it could come down to 105.7. There's also this imbalance down here that would attract it down towards the 105s. But we need to see 106 as support break. We need to break below that, and that could help the market pump a bit. On top of that, I just wanted to call out that the 10-year Treasury yield, it's been pumping, but we have a bearish divergence also developing on it. So maybe it does correct a tiny bit. If this does correct a little bit towards this 48 area, this could help the market bounce a little bit. So there's a chance of bounces coming over the next couple of days. Don't forget that we have some earnings coming out. Right before earnings, we sometimes see buyers stepping in at the last minute. That's what tends to happen. So I am anticipating a bounce for tomorrow as the most likely possibility. The market could drop a little bit more first before the bounce comes, or it just bounces from where we at. That's going to be the biggest move for tomorrow, most likely. Now, the Russell 2000 also has this very, very nice support at 166 flat. We just barely hit support. And on the 30 minutes time frame, we have a nice bullish divergence developing, which tells me it may try to make its way up to about 168 very, very soon. For another ticker such as Microsoft, we have earnings coming out soon. This thing may make an attempt to rebound a little bit, anticipating its earnings. I would say that it's holding 325 quite decently. So watch for a bounce around there. And it's also above its 4 hour 200 EMA. So watch for a rebound towards 329. That's still very possible. AMD did end up coming down, but as a bullish divergence trying to establish. If it holds 101.5, watch it try to rebound towards 103. For Netflix, it is also just barely at support at 400. However, it pumped really hard on the day of its earnings before coming down, so there's a slight bearish divergence here. So I might see Netflix a little bit weaker and may cool off just a little bit because it became quite overbought. So it could end up coming down to retest the 200 EMA. I believe it's just going to chop around this 400 area, maybe drop a tiny bit, but it's still not going to be too bad. For Ford, we also tried to bounce a little bit. We had this bullish divergence. I could see Ford establishing an uptrend and trying to get it above 11.73. So watch for this to break to hit 11.87. That is very possible. For Coinbase, there is a possible bounce that could be coming on this thing as this thing has formed a potential inverse head and shoulders like structure. We need to see this thing break above 75.4. If we manage to hold above this or close above this, I think 77 is coming, but we need to hit that level first. For Google, we came down quite a bit, but we're approaching the 4 hour 200 EMA. So I could see it dropping a little bit more towards 135.7. Then a bounce should be coming back up towards 139. We also have this nice imbalance right here. So I could see it drop a tiny bit more before it bounces back to about 139. So watch it drop towards 135.7, then bounce after that. For Amazon, we also have a very, very nice looking trend. We're actually getting very close to this support right here around this 123 zone. I think Amazon could drop a tiny bit more, maybe towards 124, a little bit below that is possible. Then it tries to bounce and tries to make its way up towards 126 plus right before earnings. So there could be a bounce coming. So watch for a small drop first before a bounce. It's also possible it doesn't drop that much since we have a bullish divergence on the 30 minutes. It could be making its way up to about 126.8 very soon. And if that breaks, watch 128, which is where we have this imbalance. So a little drop in a bounce or a bounce from here is very probable looking at the current technicals. And that's how Amazon is looking. The bounce is going to be the bigger move. Also, the same thing is developing on Meta. Meta has been trying to hold up. It's actually establishing a slight bullish divergence on the 30 minutes time frame. So I could see it retesting 312. On the 4 hour time frame, I'm seeing the same thing. So we're basically approaching our 200 EMA. So long as it holds above this 307 area, we could see buyers try to push it back above 310 to get up to about 312. And around 312, we have previous supports becoming resistance. So 312 is very possible if we get that bounce. So, anyways, guys, I'm seeing a lot of technicals out there suggesting the market could drop a little bit more than bounce or try to bounce from here. That is the most likely possibility as we have some bullish divergences. And we don't really have too much data coming out tomorrow. There's not really much coming out that gives the market a chance. And we're approaching some big earnings, and the market may be a little excited. We may see some buyers stepping in right before for some of these big tech companies. So that could be helpful as well. So the odds favor either a little bit more dropping than a bounce, a tiny bit more dropping than a bigger bounce, or a bounce as soon as we open on Monday. So watch for a bounce very soon, guys. Remain calm, cool, and collected. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you and peace out.